Thank you, Judy. That was lovely. And please know we'll do our best to use these funds wisely. And now for this morning's presentation, Reverend Charlie.
Soul Matters. Soul Matters is a collective of Unitarian Universalists who agree to think and preach each month on the same theme. There's a different theme that's chosen for each month. And the worship committee of this fellowship subscribes to the Soul Matters, and I like it. It gives me something to focus on each month. It solves several problems for me. It keeps me from preaching on the same thing over and over again. My spiritual path is basically transcendentalism, and so I would love to preach every Sunday on, isn't the weather wonderful today? And what does it do for your soul? 2, it makes me feel connected to other UUs in the country. I mean, some of you might not know it, but there is a group of Protestant churches who follow something called the Lectionary. And each week, over a 3-year cycle, they're given an Old Testament reading, a psalm, a gospel reading, and an epistle, or something else from the New Testament. So, in thousands of churches around the country, they're all kind of looking at the same thing this week. And that just always struck me as neat. And I'm glad that the UUs came up with something, because I don't think my congregation would appreciate every week I spoke from the Old Testament, a psalm, the gospel, and the epistles. And 3, it gives me ideas when my mind goes blank. This month's theme is attention. Oh, great. Soul Matters helps me figure out what I should pay attention to this month, and they tell me to pay attention to attention. This is a problem for me. I once tried to pay attention but got distracted. In 9th grade softball, I made 10 errors on 9 tries, because I couldn't keep my eye on the ball, and plus I made a lousy throw. My lack of focus is a problem, mostly for other people. I am often blissfully unaware. But sometimes this lack of focus is a strength, because by looking around, I see a lot of things that other people miss. And it seems to me that is true for most people I meet. The greatest problem with them is their greatest strength. The person who always speaks up tends to talk too much. You know, a suspicious person does not get taken advantage of, but may have trouble building trusting relationships. A trusting person makes friends easily, which is a strength, but it's a problem when their trust is abused. A hard-working person will get a job done through blood, sweat, and tears. Well, the lazy person might invent a way to do the job without blood, sweat, and tears. A detailed person might miss the forest because of the trees, and a big picture person might see the beauty of the forest but miss that bear over there. We need to pay attention to our problems and strengths. And next week's sermon will focus on strengths. But this week I'm going to be focusing on problems and how to fix them. And whenever I have a problem, I am now a modern human being, I turn to the internet. And I found too many sites on problem solving. And some sites use such words as heuristics, algorithm, difference reduction, and means-end analysis. So there's got to be an easier way to remember this stuff. So I looked up problem-solving acronyms. And I found a page entitled The 22 Most Useful Creativity and Problem-Solving Acronyms. And it includes such gems as SWOT, S-W-O-T, IDEAL, PEST, PACRA, ABCDEF, Do It, and SODAs. And all these things are words that stand for other words. And it seems that a lot of experts have come up with the solution to problem solving. And it makes me wonder why there are any problems left in the world. Perhaps these experts only solved the problem of personal poverty. They wrote a book and then retired. Problem solved. Some of these are helpful, and I'm going to look at a couple. And if what I talk to you doesn't work, rest assured there are many other things to try on the web. Do it. I like the simplicity of that acronym. If something needs to be done, do it. There's a hole in the bucket, then fix it. D is for defining the problem. O is for opening your mind. I is for identifying the best solution. And T is for transform. That must have been a good workshop at a business meeting someplace. Do it. I think the toughest part is defining the problem. You might be unhappy about something, but is it an actual problem? Most often we define the problem as another person. Someone's in my way. George Carlin once asked, did you ever notice that everybody else on the road is an idiot or a jerk? I paraphrase him. He used stronger language. If they are driving faster than you, they are a jerk that rides on your bumper or passes you dangerously. And if they're driving slower than you, you wonder, why am I stuck behind this idiot? And it's important to remember that everybody else on the road is putting you in one of those categories too. Because when we define the problem as people, we most often mean other people. We seldom define the problem as person as ourselves. But sometimes the problem is not people. And as ministers, we're told to believe, the dogma is that the problem is never people. And when I was a young minister, I thought, no, I've met some people that are a problem. But then after 25 years of experience, that I've noticed people going out the door. And if the curmudgeon goes out the door, someone will find it in their heart to step into that role. So the church will always have someone who's complaining. Because that's how systems work. And so if you look at a systems you approach, you say, okay, this person is irritating us. What can we do with the system to make this a beloved community that finds a way to include people in all their strange idiots and jerks, who we all are to somebody else? And I look in this city at a corner like 5 Points. And I get to there, and all the drivers at 5 Points, whether it's the 5 Points where the Angle Street Queen meets Pollock and Norwood and Sutton's Avenue alley, or where the Queen reaches Broad Street and Round Street. There's just this angle, and people don't know how to behave. When I was living with Joe, I was driving him back to his house for a while, and I got up there and I took a left turn, totally to the light, no problems. And Joe said to me, "Every time I make a successful left turn at this corner, I think I've gotten away with something." And there's traffic signals at these corners, but they don't help because you can see both lights from any angle that you drive up to the thing. And so you say, "Oh, great, I have red and green. I get to make a choice." So that's a place where you can see that the problem is systematic. The people are going to behave badly because they're confused. With the do-it strategy, one can get bogged down in this definition problem. It's like, what actually is wrong? O is for open mind. And this is my favorite part of every workshop I've ever been in. It's the time when the pieces of paper get pasted on the wall and people go walking around and writing any harebrained idea, any fantasy, and you just feel like the world is full of possibilities. Even though if you've gone into enough of these things, you know that those pieces of white paper will be rolled up and forgotten, and nothing from this workshop will ever be applied at your workplace or your church. But it's that moment of optimism. When the mind is open, the world is open to possibilities. Identifying the best solution is where the arguments come in. This is where the city council will decide to reroute Queen Street and make it perpendicular to Broad and Pollock. And some streets will have to be closed, and some buildings might have to be relocated. And the city will get sued by someone who wants to preserve the status quo. And our taxes will go up, and the corner will still be there. T in the do-it strategy is transform. To me, this seems overly optimistic. I've given a sermon on my pessimistic nature, but this idea that when we solve this problem, the world will transform. Everything that has led up to now will change. If we fix this one thing, all the other pieces will fall into place magically. It's not going to happen. When I replace the battery in my car this afternoon, it's not going to transform into a robot that allows me to take over the world. Hopefully my car will start. So, I like another acronym. It might not be the best problem-solving acronym. It's not the best problem-solving, but it is, according to its name, ideal. Identify, define, evaluate, act, and look back. Now, identify and define seem kind of like the same thing, but, they split it up so they could get a good word. And evaluate was evaluate, your strategies, and then you choose one, you act, and then you look back, which I usually call evaluate, but since they've already used that word, they had to come up with look back. Because after you do something, you have to say, well, what did we actually accomplish? And should we do this again if this problem reoccurs? Because we need to continually reevaluate the problem. This congregation needed space, and after much analysis and debate, the expansion project is almost complete. Did we solve the problem of space? Hopefully. Maybe, maybe not. Perhaps we'll make it too attractive and more people will come and we'll be crowded again. Perhaps people will miss the coziness of being cut in by this wall and they'll say, it just doesn't seem as close as it used to be, and they'll stop coming and then we'll have too much space. We don't know, and that's the problem with problem solving. You never quite know when you're finished. Think about climbing a hill. You might think all your problems are solved if you climb that hill. And you climb that hill and you, in the ideal sense, look back. And you can feel proud of all your accomplishments, of how you struggled and made it up that hill. And then you turn around and look ahead and you realize there are 7 more hills. Problems that you could never imagine when you were down in the valley before climbing that hill. We think that once we understand a problem, we will fix it. And we look for that end point when everything is perfect. And one of the problems of going on the internet to do research for sermons is that you often go down, well, I talked about my focus. So I was watching previews for the new movie Frozen 2 to see if they have another catchy song that will stick in my ear. And I found one that I liked, this optimism of problem solving. The snowman Olaf, who in the previous movie wondered what it would be like to be a snowman in summer and thought of all the skiing and wonderful things he would do, continues to be optimistic in this movie. He says, "This will all make sense when I am older. Someday I will see that this makes sense. One day when I'm old and wise, I'll look back and realize these were all completely normal events. I'll just dream about a time when I'm in my aged prime. Because when you're older, absolutely everything makes sense." Few of us ever get that old. But problem solving needs that optimism. Sometimes that dreamy thinking of, gee, it can't be done. Because if you start with, gee, it can't be done, it won't get done. So you need this kind of optimism that gets us through problems. But you also have to realize that there's never a time in which all the problems are solved. And so we have to think about some of the problems that problem solving has. And one that I find the most troubling is that problem solving is reactive. We are always responding to someone else's agenda. If someone cuts you off in traffic, you solve that problem by hitting out the brake and an accident's avoided, and you solve that problem. But it wasn't your plan to slam on the brakes then. These are things you just do, and life just kind of throws these problems at you, and if that's all you focus on, then all your life is problems, even if you successfully handle all the problems. You kind of feel like your life is one big game of whack-a-mole. If any of you have ever had the problem of being at a Chuck E. Cheese, and you see that table, and that's been the only thing that got me through Chuck E. Cheese and when my children were younger. There's this table of these holes where little moles pop up, and you take a hammer and you whack them. But you never win, because no matter how many moles you whack, there's always going to be moles. And even if you get very excellent at solving problems of life, you realize that you've spent your whole life playing whack-a-mole. And maybe that's not what you wanted to do. Problem solving tends to focus on weakness. And there's a way to look at problems and realize that not every problem has to be attacked, and sometimes your problem can be done by focusing on what your strengths are. There's an old gospel tune that says, "Ain't got time to die, because I keep so busy working for the master, or keep so busy." And it's that idea that I don't have time to worry. I'm busy doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And these problems come up, and they're distractions, but they don't become my whole focus. It's like, whoa, yeah. You kind of brush them off because you're so busy doing your business. Like if you're a football team and you have a lousy offense or lousy defense, you might fix that defense and keep the other team from scoring. But what some teams do, they have an offense that's able to march down the field and take 7 minutes off the clock while they're going to get a touchdown, so the other team's offense just isn't on the field. And so they sometimes say sometimes the best defense is a good offense. And sometimes it can work the other way around too. Sometimes the best offense is a good defense. But you need to figure out what are the strengths that we need to work on. It's necessary to deal with problems as they arise, but we must realize that everything that arises is not necessarily a problem. May we bless and be blessed. Let us continue with our final hymn, number 1074, Turn the World Around. We'll fix the problem. We'll just turn the world around.
Did you grab my sheet?
Yes, I did. Okay, I got them all mixed up.
He has my sheet.
We have a problem here because I stole his sheet.
We're going to take all the receipts, and the choir will lead the way. You'll just join right in with us. We're going to have a good
is life. Oh, so is life. So is life. Oh, so is life. So is life. There we go. As we part this morning, do not fail to be surprised by the catching of your breath, the quickening of your heart, the fullness of your eyes wide and suddenly awake. The world is filled with wonder, ready to be born anew. Do not fail to take notice. Shalom. Shalom. Namaste. Namaste. Peace. Coffee. They repeated it.